Hey,
Andy,
Eric.
I'm honored, man. I'm
How are you,
excited for
man?
this. Folks, folks, today I am joined by Andy Serkis, an actor you know from every film ever made. No, I'm just kidding. An actor you know from projects such as Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, The Batman, and his new film Luther the Fallen Son, which hits Netflix on March 10th. Like I said, it is an honor to be joined by you today, sir.
Oh, thanks, man. Lovely to see you.
So I want to start with your character in Fallen Son. My first note at the top was this character felt like he was straight out of the film Seven. Your dude was scary, man, in like a way that when a human could feel like this omnipresent threat, that is what I think your character achieved. A very boogeyman-esque thing about him. So what I'm curious about is how do you ground yourself in a villain that doesn't have any redeeming qualities at all? Because we've heard the cliche of, I love a villain that believes that they're the hero of their own story. This is not that guy. So how do you go about grounding yourself in that, or is it instead about not grounding yourself and embracing sort of the alienness of it?
Great question. And I think the thing about David Roby is that he almost doesn't exist as a human, and that is the tragedy. There is a tragedy to the character. So without making any excuses for what he does, because he does despicable things, he is a psychopath and he is a serial killer, but he is a very lonely, isolated human being who has no other way of connecting with humanity other than through observing voyeuristically and kind of almost like a vampire, watching them through their own devices at home because they've given themselves up to this wonderful thing called the internet. He is able to spy on them and watch the most mundane, boring things that they do from day to day, from, picking their teeth to cutting their toenails to, doing their washing to whatever it is. And he sucks elements of their lives because he has no life of his own. So the David Roby character is basically that much David Roby, and the rest reflecting society and society's willingness to buy into the internet. It's all in all its awfulness and brilliance. And so the monster is actually what's out there that we've given up responsibility to and washed our hands and gone, okay, look, I have a technology that can be hacked. I can lose my identity to, that I can be, made through deep fake to look like someone else. I can, and so on and so on. It goes on.
Jesus, I know
These
the
are
deep fakes are
all
just
you know,
terrifying.
so that, and David can only come into existence by shaming other people and absorbing them, but also then manipulating them. And so like I say, he's the tip of the iceberg, which is this the big monster being something that we have all around us and that we're happy to hand over to.
So you bring up tech. Something I could not think about is you are an actor, the actor, who's perhaps synonymous with the use of tech in film. So I'm wondering if that was a calculation on the creative team's part to have the tech actor become the tech killer. And how do you feel? How do you, Andy, a director and actor, feel about the use in tech in film? Because there are some franchises out there, not to name names, that have gotten a lot of heat in the last few years for their CGI. So I'm curious how you feel, as since your character was sort of weaponizing the dangers of tech. How do you feel about it in your job?
It's a really interesting one, and it's reached a really interesting moment in its kind of evolution, really, I suppose, because now if I think about it, my body has been scanned, my face has been scanned thousands of times. So in terms of my own identity, my movements, my physicality can be, in terms of deep fake, it's a no-brainer. If anybody wanted to put me in a compromising situation, they can. You don't need necessarily to have the amount of tech that we've used to create the characters that I've played to do that anymore, but at a certain point you would have. But it's like every, it's but there are issues now about owning your own digital identity, for instance. There's lots of questions about the future of digital resurrection, and someone I was talking to the other day, someone at a con, how would you feel about someone playing you in 30 years time, once you're gone? And I'm like, well, look, here's the deal. I've bought into this. If someone were to play me, rather like sampling music, as long as it was used in a creative way, and that, for instance, my peeps down the line, whether it's with the family or the estate or whatever it is, kind of agree to it that it's a good idea, then so be it. I won't have any control over it. But it's a thought, and because we look at Peter Cushing, we look at Carrie Fisher, all the actors who have been brought back using this technology. It's a very, very interesting time. Plus, also the other huge debate is in a world where we are rightly so, the acting profession is all, and the filmmaking profession, storytelling professions are all about equal representation. It's just like, and anybody being able to, or people being able to play what they, in terms of identity politics and so on and so forth. Here's a technology that allows you to be anything, regardless of the color of your skin, the height you are, the sex you are, how you identify yourself. Here's a technology that does allow you to step into anyone's shoes or any creature's feet.
I'm amazed by your open-mindedness to what's such an existential threat to creativity. You know what I mean? Like, it's, but that is a perspective that I had not thought of. It sort of unlocks the door for all people to, create in this. Yeah, please go ahead.
But then the other side of that, is an algorithm that can write a script for you. So that, the formulaic, perfect Hollywood script, can be written like that by the tap of a button. Or if I imagine something conceptually, that it can pop up on a computer. If I want a chipmunk brushing its teeth, then I can tap in the amount of imagery of chipmunks and toothbrushes, and it doesn't take much to put them together. Anyway, we digress.
Back to David, a bit more of an obtuse topic. What's the how did you bring something? The serial killer is a very well established villainous arc. How did you try to bring something new to that?
Because in a sense, again, he abjures responsibility for doing these things by saying, well, it's what people want. It's what people want to see. It's not, I'm not doing this for my own good. I don't get any pleasure out of it myself. It's actually about demand, supply and demand. People want to see this. People want to see snuff movies. People want to see people, injuring other people on screen as live entertainment. That's if that's what they want, I'm willing to provide it. It's in his head. He's putting it. He's bouncing it back. That's what I'm saying. He reflects the moral dimension. He reflects back to the society that's out there and what it's willing to take.
And then you and Idris have a pretty intense fight scene that I imagine is more his forte than yours. Talk to me about those days on set. I'm sorry, Andy. I didn't mean to offend you with that one. I honestly don't know how big he is, but he looks like he's got to be at least 6'2". I mean, that's a burly dude. What pops in your head when you think of those days on set?
Yeah, but I'm a 13th Dan Kung Fu expert. I'm not actually at all. I'm just, I don't even know if 13.
You could have sold me on that one. It wouldn't surprise me.
No, Idris is a formidable opponent, and he is a genuinely skillful martial artist, and he's a kickboxer. So we had to find a fighting skill. I had a great. The stunt team were amazing, and I loved working with them. I did quite a lot of training with them to find a way that would reflect David Roby's style of fighting, which is, again, it's not filled with any. It's just almost a kind of passionless sort of and minimal. Using the use of a knife. We used a knife with a blade which can be spun around and so on, but causing maximum damage with minimum effort, and actually just more about avoiding techniques as opposed to trying to meet him full on, because that would never work. He's too strong. It is more like being a picador in a or matador in a bullfight, standing back, dodging, and then
use his own sort of speed and weight against them.
Correct.
All right, I got to move on to Star Wars now. You've been involved in two of my favorite Star Wars projects of all time. I'm somebody who I didn't get to see the original ones until I was a bit too old, so I could see the sort of technological gap. And I was a kid when the prequels came out, which weren't necessarily kid-friendly. So I didn't understand the Star Wars magic until I was a grown man. Rogue One came first. The Last Jedi came next, but Andor. Andy, let me tell you, and I think I speak for a lot of Star Wars fans out there, Kino Loy is one of the most, I think, revelatory creations in the history of the franchise. So honestly, thank you for that. I think he's sort of the perfect distillation of what makes this story so compelling. But with all that said, The Last Jedi and Andor are two of the more divisive Star Wars projects out there. What do you think explains that? I doubt it's because you're in them, but it just so happens that you are. So I'm curious your thoughts.
I mean, the thing is, I suppose it's what sort of Star Wars world you like. Do you buy it more into the grounded kind of Rogue One universe, which has a sort of, the logic is always completely believable because it feels more human and it's grounded in Earth. It's more earthbound in a sense. And the characters are, and they're all the kind of the nuance in the nuance in the characters, the designs of all of the characters, and the sort of it just feels like the kind of the grey, interesting, kind of psychologically complex area of Star Wars storytelling. So people who like Rogue One and like Andor, seem to be at odds with the people who are more in love with the space opera, who love the fantasy elements, who really kind of who want to transcend through this world, and still, what's so brilliant about it is that they both operate. They both work entirely, and both are, viable and real, and touch people and move people in huge ways. But one is much more extreme and theatrical and of a sci-fi and fantasy feel, and the other is feels as real as anything. So but they can exist because it's a big galaxy, so they can both exist. What I loved most about that show, and it speaks to the genius of the writing, is that the cut to blacks were largely like out of context moments. Kino Loy saying never more than 12 is one of the most sort of rallying cry moments that I could remember in Star Wars, but it's literally just a random sentence and a random fact stated between two characters. And that, to me, is so powerful. So I hope to see you pop up in season 2. I doubt you could speak on it, so I'm not even going to waste our time. Trust me, I've been doing this a long time, as I'm sure you have. Let's move on to the Batman. Batman is my character. It's what got me into this world. I have loved him since I was a kid. What makes the film that you're in, the Batman, so great is that despite how many iterations there are, it did something new with that character. How are you hoping the sequel does the same to not only bring something new to the character, but to bring something new to its own series of films? I mean, what we have is a very special ingredient here, which is Matt Reeves. He is a phenomenal storyteller, a brilliant filmmaker, a visionary film director, but also a great writer. And he again wanted to ground the Gotham, so it felt, and it had its own internal kind of reality and internal logic. It feels very, very, very real. And what he wanted for Alfred and the relationship between Alfred and a younger Bruce was that sense of, well, he wanted him to feel like he could handle himself, that he was a soul, that and so with the backstory for Alfred, from my point of view, was that he was in the SAS. He was he's fought in campaigns. He's and suffered injuries as a result. he's then worked with the MI5. He's then gone into top level security. He's worked maybe for like royal families or whatever, and then has ended up, being employed by Wayne Enterprises. So, and crucially, he is not able to. He was not there for Bruce at his moment of need, and when his parents were assassinated. So and he's unable to be. He should be able to be a father figure, but he is emotionally incapable of being a father figure. All he can do is to, again, sort of at a distance, and a painful distance, try and be the caretaker and the carer, and someone who has that, the outward kind of like outwardly the sort of the parental role, but actually that can never fully be filled, and that is a very painful relationship. And so I think I don't know what's going to happen, and I have no idea. Matt is, dear friend of mine, and he's writing as we speak this next iteration. I just know whatever he does will have that emotional heft. I think that will continue, and at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I can't really guess what's going to happen, but I do know that I trust him with Alfred's life.
And the Alfred casting, I find, is one of the more underrated dynamics of Batman, because he's not only a father figure, he's only the counterbalance Batman has in the entire world. Without him to keep him anchored to Earth. And then if you look in the long line of actors who played the role, do you feel a sense of legacy pride in that? You've done multiple legacy defining roles, but does it feel special to be like, I'm one of the few who have played this character?
Yeah, and you do feel, I mean, you absolutely, you sort of feel a responsibility, but you also know that you are, in the same way that say, in these franchises, you become, and I've used the word before to explain it, and I think it's the right word. It's like you become the custodian of the role for a certain period of time, and you cherish it and you love it, and you give everything to it. But it is much like doing a Shakespeare play, or any play, where you take the role of, say, Hamlet or whatever it is, Benedict or King Lear, and you totally immerse yourself in that world of the play, knowing that next year someone else is going to play King Lear and Hamlet and Benedict. So whilst it's in your, it's whilst you got your hands on it, you do what you can to make it live and within the context of the world that we're in at this particular moment in time, and do your best with it, and then knowing that you will be passing the baton on, and there's something really enjoyable about that, because I love seeing. I mean, it's like the Next Apes movie. I can't wait to see what goes on with the Next Apes movie. I'm excited to see that.
Now, while your character in Andor, his fate is up in the air, the character in the Batman is not. So I am going to press here a bit. I did see reports today that filming of the sequel is supposed to start in November. Can you speak to that at all?
I know that it's supposed to have a 2025 kind of delivery date. That's all I know. That's that. I mean, I would tell you, but that's all I know.
Good man. And then how about the Penguin show that just started to film this month? Any involvement in that at all?
No, and I know nothing about that either.
No, sir. Okay, well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Lord of the Rings.
What's that?
What was that?
What's it called? Lord of the what?
It starred this little ugly bald fella that just wouldn't go away. No, listen. I don't know if I'm the first one to ask you about this, but a few weeks ago, reports came out that Warner and New Line are trying to make new films. You are one of the hearts of these stories. You are a defining character. How do you feel about this news?
Look, I mean, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens are sort of a second family that I have become part of and have gone on to make so many films with. And let me tell you, they are the best and most incredible people to work with. And I think that there are so many other so many other potential Middle Earth projects which could come about. And if they're doing them, then I would, of course, jump at the chance to have that relationship rekindled and work with them on it, because, After I finished doing Lord of the Rings, I was lucky enough to do an audiobook recording of The Hobbit. And then what followed on from that was an audiobook recording of The Lord of the Rings. And then after that, I've just finished an audiobook recording of The Silmarillion. And so Middle Earth has never left me in a way. And I know for a fact that there are so many strands of those stories that can easily become their own journeys, you know. So yeah, I think it'll be incredible.
So as we close out here, I just want to ask some broad ones. Because you've played truly some iconic characters, and I want your answers, not what the world might think about you. What performance do you hope, not think, hope, stands the test of time of yours?
Look, it goes without saying that Gollum was a huge game changer character for me, because it opened up not only the world of Middle Earth and all of that, but a whole new technology and a whole way of approaching creating characters. And so that was a big sliding doors moment of my life, where suddenly it threw into focus lots of different interests of mine, which I was a visual artist before I became an actor. And so it sort of, a lot of my friends on Lord of the Rings were also became visual effects artists and animators. And that whole world then became opened up to me. And I never expected that for a minute. And from that came, the experience of creating a company, the Imaginarium, and all sorts of things. So that role, apart from it being a very complex and demanding physically, vocally, and I think there's probably a good chance that I might well only be remembered for that role, because people, literally on a day-to-day basis ask me to do Gollum impressions or
voices,
voices, or for their answer phones and so on. So I know that I'm pretty certain that that's going to be the one that that I'll be remembered for. I can't believe I'm talking about this. But equally, I have a very, very, very strong feeling for the character of Caesar, because that playing a character kind of all the way through from birth through to death over the course of 3 movies. Not only that, a chimpanzee who grows and changes physically, and as a recipient of an Alzheimer's drug, has an enhanced intelligence, and then becomes more human-like. And just the evolution of that character, and the sort of the joy and the exploration of that over 3 films, and then ending up where he does. It was, and working with the teams and fellow people.
And for me as a fan, those films were the ones where I was like, oh, mocap, whoa. You're like, I could see the furrow of your brow, man. That's just yeah. Right. All right. And then real quick here, as I wrap up, final one. When I say the most memorable character performance you've ever performed, what pops in? Most memorable character moment you've ever performed, what pops in your head?
I guess it would have to be the scene where Gollum and Smeagol talk to each other, because I'll never forget the moment that at the Ziegfeld Theatre in New York in 2002, I think it was, of sitting there and watching Gollum really, where he comes into his own in the Two Towers, and that scene particularly, the joyful moment of seeing an entire audience suddenly kind of just go like this, move forward, and sit, and kind of like, it was incredible. It really did make the hair stand up on the back of my neck, actually. Just because they couldn't quite understand what they were watching, and that was quite exciting.
Andy, I've got to wrap here. I've spoken to a lot of men and women in your line of work, but I was rarely as excited as I've been to speak to you today, because your work, just the sheer breadth of it, especially for a dude my age. I'm 30. I've grown up with you in everything I've ever loved. So thank you for that. This chat was a blast. And I also read online that you are a fan of the Gunners. So if so, you just got a few more months left. Hold on tight. Thank you, Andy.